And we are off. We are live. There's little old me. Hi, everyone. Welcome to live All Dolphins podcast episode on this occasion of the Miami Dolphins mini bye after their Thursday night game against the Baltimore Ravens. The Dolphins did not play on Sunday. Good news, they didn't lose. But we'll be here all week. Remember to tip your waitresses. But they're still making news, whether it be with the trade speculation going on and a whole bunch of Dolphin names being mentioned as possibilities. Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, Matthew Judon, Jalen Waddle. What's going to happen? More speculation. What's going to happen with Tua Tagovailoa? Of course, the coach situation with Mike McDaniel remaining through at least the end of the 2025 season, the GM search, and all that good stuff. And we're not going to dive into all of that with my spiel at the beginning. And as always, check out the chat, see what's on you fine folks' mind. I apologize for the late notice. I was debating back and forth whether I was going to do an episode this evening and decided, you know what? Let me chat with my peeps. So before we get cranking, as always, my friendly reminder to please hit that like button. Subscribe if you don't already do so. We want to get those numbers as high as possible. My reminder that when I reach 20,000 subscribers, I will be donning not only a Dolphins hat, I will be donning a Dolphins jersey as well. We've got to stick through this period of transition with the Dolphins, some transition as they start building towards 2026, starting with that NFL trading deadline, which arrives Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Beyond the like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, please also check out the website, all free content at miamidolphinson.si.com. So, where to start? Let's start with the reports that have come out over the weekend regarding head coach Mike McDaniel. I think that's a good starting point. I think I told you guys before, nothing has changed. Stephen Ross likes Mike McDaniel very much, no duh. And maybe a big sign that was the case occurred when Stephen Ross signed Mike McDaniel to a contract extension in 2024. It wasn't just Tua, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Ramsey who got new deals. Mike McDaniel got a new deal when he had 2 years left on his contract. Let me tell you, that is not very typical for a coach to get an extension with 2 years left on his contract. It's even less so when that coach has yet to win a playoff game. And of course, the question becomes, why is Stephen Ross so in love with Mike McDaniel? Well, beyond the fact that Mike McDaniel's a good guy and he's very likable, remember that when Mike McDaniel was hired, a big part of the reason was that he convinced the Dolphin brass he could maximize the skills of Tua Tagovailoa and get the most out of him as a quarterback after his first 2 years in the NFL, which were not particularly impressive. For whatever reason you want to say, whether it was a lack of talent around him, the lack of a scheme, the lack of belief from a head coach, whatever the reason, it still wasn't good. And Mike McDaniel convinced the Dolphins he could get the most out of Tua Tagovailoa, and he most definitely did. He took his career to a different level in 2022, 2023, which led to Tua signing the big contract extension in July of 2024, which right now certainly looks like a very poor decision, given that the Dolphins have themselves a major Tua dilemma, which we'll address a little bit further. But that's one reason. The other part of it, and I don't think we can discount this, is for a while in 2022 and 2023, the Dolphins very much were prevalent in talk in the national media when it came time to talk about teams. The Dolphins, especially like you looked at pregame shows, were often a topic of conversation with their high-flying offense, the way they were scoring. That 70-20 game was historic, even though it was absolutely a mirage. The problem, and this would be the argument against keeping Mike McDaniel as a head coach, the argument against it was that, that was all fine and dandy when you were playing lesser competition. At that time, the Denver Broncos were not very good. They have improved exponentially since that date, but they weren't great at the time. And their effort, or lack thereof, in the second half of that 70-20 game was borderline embarrassing. The problem with the offense, and as the way it's been constituted and created, it was always a very small margin forever because everything is based on speed, timing, rhythm, and all that stuff. And what happens, the game just becomes flat out more physical once you get toward the end of the regular season and into the playoffs. The weather conditions also get worse, and all of that contributes to working against timing-based finesse-style offenses. That's why invariably the physical teams do better at the end of the season. So that would be an argument to where even now, as much as Stephen Ross likes Mike McDaniel, unless there's a drastic change in philosophy offensively, just how far can this go? Okay, so this was done in conjunction with the Dolphins moving on from Chris Grier. The official terminology was a mutual parting of the ways, code word for he was fired, but that's a different story. And then the question becomes, of course, well, what's Mike McDaniel's future moving forward? And the reporting has been on Friday. It began with at least he's going to stay on at least through the end of the 2025 season. That was Adam Schefter. Then Tom Pelissero goes on the Rich Eisen's show and says, don't dismiss the possibility that Mike McDaniel will be back in 2026. Then Ian Rappaport on Sunday morning comes out and says that the hope is, that as it stands right now, the hope is that the Dolphins want to move forward this season through next year. See where we're going with this? And then the other issue then, how much of that ties into Tua Tagovailoa as a quarterback because of his contract situation. Now, my belief all along is and I think I've been pretty consistent saying on the All Dolphins podcast, is do not underestimate how much Stephen Ross likes Mike McDaniel. Do not assume he's automatically gone if the Dolphins don't make the playoffs. And now the issue is the Dolphins are 2-7. They're not mathematically out of the playoffs. They're realistically out of the playoffs. So there will come a point when it becomes mathematical where the Dolphins absolutely, as an organization, should stop having as their sole focus winning games, but rather evaluating which young players you can build around, seeing which veterans might be worth bringing back. And that means increased playing time for certain young players who are not getting playing time right now, even at the cost of potentially winning games. I'm talking about guys, for example, the one who jumps out at me, Zeke Biggers, number one. Why is he on the roster if they're going to play him? Makes no sense. Greg Dulcich, for example, is another one. At tight end, he should be getting some work. Jalen Wright at running back absolutely should be getting more work. And I don't understand why his name keeps being thrown around in trade speculation. I'm going to get into trade speculation a little bit later. And as a reminder, we will get to the chat and what you find folks have to say sooner rather than later. I want this to be more interactive than usual, but I want to go through my little spiel and just give you my thoughts on certain things. So that's 4 players right there. Who else? Jason Marshall Jr. absolutely should get loads of playing time. My linebacker, not really, but he jumps out on the edge. Chop Robinson needs to play more. And that certainly would happen organically if Bradley Chubb or Jalen Phillips or Matthew Judon wound up being traded. And then on the offensive line, you're already playing the young guys or the young guy you need to play. And then Quinn Ewers. Makes no sense to play Zach Wilson. I don't think Zach Wilson is going to be on the team in 2026. So what's the point? And at one point, you move on. You go from Tua to Quinn Ewers. See what you have. See if there's a need to get another number 2 in 2026. See if Quinn Ewers shows you enough to think maybe down the road this is somebody who could compete for a starting job and give you a chance to win big. Those are all the questions. The Tua dilemma, there was a report today, I believe that was also from Rappaport, suggesting the idea of a benching later on with Tua. And to me, it makes perfect sense in the lens of trying to get an evaluation on Quinn Ewers, not necessarily in the lens of somebody giving you a better chance to win, because even though Tua's had his ups and downs, he's been very inconsistent in 2025, more so than usual. Still the best quarterback on the roster, and I don't think it's even close. So this idea of a benching, I don't know if that's a proper terminology. It makes for nice attention grabbing copy, but is it really a benching, or is it you move on to evaluate somebody else? But yeah, absolutely, it would certainly make sense. And this is where, if you do the math, why would Mike McDaniel be on board to sit to a play Quinn Ewers if he doesn't know he's coming back in 2026? We've discussed this. Other than being a good loyal soldier, but it's also that goes on his resume every loss. And if it's a loss that you kind of sacrifice for the benefit of the organization long term in terms of evaluating players, I don't know that loyalty goes up to that point. So again, to me, it all ties in together with the issue of what to do with Tungo Vailoa moving forward to his contract. We know the deal. The Dolphins, basically, when they signed him, they more or less tied themselves to him through 2026. And if you don't know the numbers by now, the ones I have, this is through over the cap. The dead money, if the Dolphins were to release him next offseason, is $99 million, whether the Dolphins want to take the hit all in one sum. And what does that mean by taking the hit? That means this Tua would have a cap number of $99 million despite not being on the roster. And how does that impact the Dolphins? Well, that's $99 million from the salary cap that they can't spend on another player, which is what happened this year with your cornerbacks, where they had, I think it was like 32 million of cap space devoted to Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, and Kendall Fuller, none of whom were on the roster. Well, right now the Dolphins have $4 million of cap space. Those three cornerbacks, that's $36 million that the Dolphins could have used on some more established veterans along the offensive line, for one thing, maybe at cornerback, although cornerback play hasn't been horrible, but there could have been upgrades there as well. Can you trade him? I think that's been suggested. The other part of it, again, Dolphins can do $99 million all next year, or they can spread it by making a post-June 1 cut, and then it would be $67 million next year, $32 million in 2027 if you make him a post-June 1 cut. However, Tua can sign with anybody at the time he's cut, but the Dolphins can't use that, don't have access to that cap space. He still counts as $67 million against the cap until, whatever money is saved, actually would go up. But the cap ramifications don't apply until June 1st. As it stands right now, Tua will count $54 million, I want to say, against the cap, which is a very high number for a quarterback who's kind of underperforming in 2025, though his performance hasn't been nearly as brutal as a lot of his detractors would suggest, just like his performance against Atlanta in week 8 wasn't nearly as good as some of his supporters would have you believe, because he had the 4 touchdowns alongside or on his resume in that particular game. So as far as trading Tua, and this is where I would need, I know about the cap. I'm not a cap expert. I do know he's got $39 million in guaranteed base salary that any acquiring team in the trade would take on. Plus, he's got some bonus money coming in. I don't know the exact number, but so basically we're looking at the very least north of $40 million for a quarterback who A, is very injury prone, and B, is kind of whose production has regressed since his high level of 2023. Good luck finding a taker. This is why somebody suggested, this was gentleman from ESPN, I want to believe, in a story, suggested in doing hypothetical trades for every team for the Raiders to acquire Tua, but to have the Dolphins give them 2 second-round picks to basically to absorb the cap hit. To which I would say, if the Dolphins are in a rebuilding mode, why would they give away draft picks to get rid of Tua when he's still going to be, his cap number is going to be higher than if you keep him? Makes no sense. So Tua is going to be on the roster. Is he going to be the starter? Maybe. Will the Dolphins finish low enough in the standings to get a very high draft pick in the first round and take a quarterback and have Tua start until the guy is ready, or have Tua as a very expensive backup a la Kirk Cousins? Maybe. But then again, why do you need Mike McDaniel to do that? I think McDaniel and Tua have been tied together since the time McDaniel was hired, and I think it's going to be that way to the end. which leads us to the GM situation. Champ Kelly, formerly of the Las Vegas Raiders, and ironically, good call by Dante Colonelli, deputy editor of Miami Dolphins on SI, who pointed out that when Champ Kelly was named interim GM of the Las Vegas Raiders in 2023, it also happened on October 31st, just like it did this year. The one difference is the trade deadline already had passed in 2023. Obviously, it has not passed. All reporting is that he's been given full control, as logic says, dictates that to make trades for the Dolphins before Tuesday at 4 p.m. But if the Dolphins are going to run it back with Mike McDaniel and with Tua, which again I would say is north of 50-50 right now, kind of tough to hire a big-name GM who's going to want to, put his stamp and bring in his own people. And you've seen the list of candidates. And when you want to look for candidates, look at the organizations that generally have done well in the draft and winning organizations. What's that? Detroit, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Buffalo, Rams, which is why you've seen some of the names we've seen. Ray Agnew from the Detroit Lions is one who absolutely jumps out as assistant general manager. Ask yourself, if you were to be contacted, but you have to keep Mike McDaniel on and Tua's going to be on your roster, Ray Agnew, who's I don't think is going to be lacking for offers within the next few years, might just well say, no, I'm good. Either look somewhere else or wait another year where he can bring in his own people. Again, this is one example. There are other people out there, and the same example would apply. Trade speculation. Jalen Waddle. The Jalen Waddle thing drives me nuts because you've seen the reports that are basically Chris Greer said, no, I'm not trading Jalen Waddle, not going to happen, to now, well, we'll listen to offers. Chris Greer said it before as it pertained to Tyreek Hill, somebody wants to offer me 2 first-round picks. I'll listen. You don't think that would have applied to Jalen Waddle? There is not a player who is untouchable for the right offer. Okay? That applies to Jalen Waddle. If somebody would have called Chris Greer when he was still GM of the Dolphins with an offer that would completely blown him away, he would not have said, no, not trading him. Sorry. And it's the same now. And now the backtracking, like the reports today was like probably not going to happen because they're going to ask for a first-round pick plus. If you check out Miami Dolphins on SI.com on a regular basis, and again, I hope you do. The content is free. I wrote that 2 weeks ago. It makes 0 sense, zero, for the Dolphins to trade Jalen Waddle unless they get a completely ridiculous offer. Again, he's young, he's highly productive, and he's cheap. His contract is very team-friendly. Why in the hell would you want to get rid of that guy? Because guess what? Even if the Dolphins go through a big rebuild, you still need players for that rebuild. You need good players. Guess what? Jalen Waddle's a good player, and he's got a good contract from a team standpoint. Why in the world would you want to do that? Okay. So let me go very quickly through the guys as it applies. Again, even Patrick Paul. Patrick Paul, to me, based on his contract, the level of play, probably would be the closest thing to untouchable the Dolphins have because he plays a premium position. He's in his second year in the NFL. He's on his rookie contract, and the dude has been balling. So he's a foundational piece. Makes 0 sense for the Dolphins to even consider it. But again, somebody goes crazy and we'll give 2 for 2 1s and a 3 because we really want a left tackle. Then you're like, okay, maybe. So no such thing as an untouchable. The names that we've heard, obviously, in the logic because of contract age, production, whatever the reason, Matthew Judon is at the end of his career, who does have some pass rushing skills in his history, even though we haven't seen it so far this year. Could interest somebody, but you're going to get what for him? It could be one of those infamous trades that we've seen in the past week. It'd be Judon and a 7 for a 6. Is that worth doing? Not very consequential, but chances are he's not going to be part of your rebuild in 2026. So why not improve 1 round on the pick next year? Bradley Chubb got a cap number excess of $30 million next year. He's not seeing that. Already took a very nice haircut to return in 2025. He's got a big name, the production, even though he does have 4 sacks, which is not a terrible total, but he's not been particularly impactful. What can you get for him? Dolphins absolutely should be willing to listen. Jalen Phillips, playing on his 5th-year option at 13 points. I just looked it up earlier today, and I even wrote about it on the website, Miami Dolphins on SI.com. 13.2, 13.3. It's all base salary, all guaranteed 5th-year option. If they trade him, it becomes 6.5 for whatever acquiring team there is. There's a report out there. This is from Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, that the Dolphins are looking for a day 2 pick, that 2nd or 3rd round. And then the team that's been connected with Phillips the most is the Philadelphia Eagles. There's the Vic Fangio connection. And the idea is that the Eagles want the Dolphins to pick up some of the salary, 6.5. Again, Stephen Ross is not lacking for money. Obviously, whatever the Dolphins would pick up would go against their cap. But they would still save the remainder of what Philly would pick up, so it would be a gain in terms of cap space. And not like Stephen Ross is hurting for money. If it can facilitate a trade, I say absolutely do it. Day 2 pick means 2nd or 3rd round. I would be floored if the Dolphins were able to get a 2nd round pick for Jalen Phillips, unless they throw in something else, like, it's Phillips and a 5 for a 2 or something, or Phillips and a 4 for a 2, something along those lines. But he's somebody to consider. The idea here with the Dolphins is they have to ask themselves, is this somebody we want to sign to a long-term contract next offseason when he's scheduled to become an unrestricted free agent? He's got 3 sacks on the season, which he projected 17 games. That's 5, which is not a high number, but he's been pretty consistent in getting pressure on the quarterback. He just hasn't finished well enough, and there are a couple of glaring plays that stand out. The one against Justin Herbert at the end of the Chargers game, the one against Lamar Jackson last Thursday night, which wound up leading to a 30-yard completion from Jackson to tight end Isaiah Likely. So you look elsewhere on the roster, I don't think anybody's trading for a Dolphin quarterback. Can't imagine. And there are even the teams that are really hurting for quarterbacks. Zach Wilson has some experience, but the last time he played a regular season game, it was ugly. At running back, the Jalen Wright thing makes 0 sense to me. He's on his rookie contract. The Dolphins gave up a 2025 3rd-round pick to get a 4th-round pick in 2024 for the chance to draft Jalen Wright, and they're going to bail on him after a year and 9 games when he's basically barely had any carries. It makes 0 sense. And we saw Thursday night, Dolphins could have used a 3rd quarterback. And by the way, I took Mike McDaniel to task for not having 3 halfbacks active for the game against the Ravens. That makes 0 sense. You should never go into a game with only 2 active running backs. And in fact, if memory serves, Dolphins did that actually in the first 2 weeks of the regular season when Wright was nursing his knee injury, and the elevations did not involve, or did they involve? No, they did not involve Jeff Wilson Jr. You'll have to forgive me. I'm losing my mind here. I know. Already done. I know. I can tell. I can hear the whispers already. So regardless of the whole thing, Jalen Wright doesn't make any sense. At wide receiver, I don't know that anybody has any trade value other than Jalen Waddle, and I've already told you guys my feelings on it. Makes 0 sense. At tight end, could Darren Waller interest another team? Oh, absolutely. But Darren Waller right now is injured. He's on IR. He's going to have to miss, 2 more games? Mike McDaniel told us when I asked him during a Zoom call if it was season ending. Oh, no, actually, somebody else asked him, but I planted the seed. It's not season ending, so he will return. He's got some value. Remember, though, when he was coming out of retirement, he said he related he only wanted to play for Frank Smith or John Gruden. Would that make him say, no, I don't want to be traded? If you trade me, I'm going to retire. Don't know what his mindset is as far as that situation is concerned, but he's somebody the Dolphins could get a call on the offensive line. Be nice, folks. I can hear right now saying, who the hell would want one of the Dolphin offensive linemen? Yep, that's a good point. You know who might actually? The LA Chargers, who lost 2 offensive tackles. They're already down to like their 5th right tackle. Joe Alt has been back in the lineup at left tackle. He went down again. The right tackle went down again. Who's to say the Chargers don't call the Dolphins and say, what do you want for Kendall Lamb, for example? Because he's a veteran, hasn't played it down all year on offense because the Dolphins have gone with Larry Borum. Um, could you get a 7th-round pick for Kendall Lamb? Maybe. He's at the end of his career. He would be somebody I think he'd be if there's any Dolphin offensive lineman who might get a phone call about, it would be him. Don't think anybody's going to call about Patrick Paul because Dolphins are not going to trade him. The price would be too high. Aaron Brewer, Dolphins would have no reason to make that move unless it's for a fairly decent pick. The thing with him is his contract goes up next year. His cap number goes up next year. It's pretty hefty, but he's still a good player. So he's a good player. Not only that, he's one of the few leaders on that team, the real leaders on that team. Why would the Dolphins want to move away from a guy like that? Doesn't make sense. Defensive line. And I don't know who you get a call for at this stage. Linebacker, Jordan Brooks, maybe. And again, the Dolphins restructured his contract. They lowered his base salary, which makes it easier for a team acquiring him because it's less money. It's less money that they have to take on. Could that have been setting the stage? I don't necessarily understand why. It was just a conversion of base salary into signing bonus if he wasn't going to be extended at that time. Interesting. So he could be somebody in play. At cornerback, Rasul Douglas. And I know the Green Bay Packers, one of his former teams, are among those teams looking for cornerback help. Could that be a fit there? Question with him is he's played very well for the Dolphins, actually, after being signed in late August. After a down year with Buffalo last year, does he fit into the plans for the Dolphins in 2026? He's a little bit on the older side, but again, he has played very well. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Is he even want to come? Is he even going to want to come back or explore options somewhere else, perhaps with a team that's not in rebuilding mode, like the Dolphins figure to be? And the last name that makes absolute sense. By the way, somebody mentioned Jason Sanders in a mailbag on Miami Dolphins on SI.com. First of all, why would you trade Jason Sanders if you're the Dolphins? If it's not clear by now that he's much better than Riley Patterson, and we have seen the value of a really, really dependable kicker with games around the NFL, I'd hang on to Jason Sanders, whose cap number goes up next year, but it's not egregious in the least for a high-end kicker. So to me, plus right now he can't kick. He's injured. He's on the injured reserve list with a hip injury. And the last name, the one that makes a lot of sense, is Minkah Fitzpatrick. Again, he's a little bit on the older side. The performance, he's been solid, nothing special. I don't know that he's all-pro Minkah Fitzpatrick, and it's a trend now. It's going on 3 years of the circumstances around him. You see flashes of really good play from time to time. I think there could be a market for him. Don't know what you get, but he's certainly a player to keep an eye on. So those are my thoughts. If I were to predict, I certainly think the Dolphins are going to make at least one trade, maybe two. I know this idea has been thrown out that because it's Champ Kelly now, he's going to want to make a splash and it's going to be a fire sale like that. I don't believe that's going to be a fire sale. Best guess is Jalen Phillips is traded and somebody else. Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily want to predict who the second player might be because they're the second player, Judon, Chubb, Douglas, Jordan Brooks, I think I would put in that category. But Jordan Brooks, again, has been very good for the Dolphins, and he's a leader. Dolphins need those moving forward. So I don't necessarily would like the idea of trading Jordan Brooks. I'm just saying. But it could be more likely to be somebody like Minkah is a name to watch, I think. So beyond that, as we saw around the league today, the New England Patriots are going to be a problem. They got the good Atlanta Falcons on Sunday and not the bad Falcons the Dolphins got in Week 8. And again, this is not to take away from what the Dolphins did, but you saw what Michael Penix and Drake London being to get back together in the game, the difference that kind of made. And this was like, Drake London had 9 catches for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. You don't think that the game against the Dolphins would have been different had he been in the lineup? But the Patriots found a way to win, although missed extra point at the end of the game. Still, they're 7-2. Drake May had maybe one of his weakest performances in a few weeks, and it still was pretty good. So that team is going to be a problem now for a few years. Buffalo looked like they were a little bit on a little bit of a dip. Then came the bye. Then they go at Carolina, which beat Green Bay today. And the Bills completely spanked the Panthers last week. And then they came back and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Now you got two teams in the division. It's 7-2 New England, 6-2 Buffalo. So Dolphins have a long way to go before they get back to that point. It's going to be rebuilding time in the offseason, maybe starting Tuesday. Again, don't expect a flurry of trades. But that's pretty much what went on over there. So let's check out, see what we got. Whoa, I got 188 comments over here. Let's get into it, shall we? We shall begin with Chateau Fatez with the $5 donation. Thank you very much, kind sir. Very kind of you. Is NWI's route running that bad that Tua doesn't throw to him, or is it Tua just takes forever to trust most receivers? He caught TDs with Will Levis. He most certainly did. Yeah, it's a good question there. There's absolutely a level of distrust going on there where not a whole lot of targets go his way. It's interesting, though. A lot of his touchdowns last year, if memory serves, were like from long distance. But Mike McDaniel will tell you, and he's been asked about an NWI, that he likes his contribution so far because he's a willing blocker in the running game. But I think when the Dolphins signed him, we all expected him to be like a clear number 3 wide receiver option behind Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, with Malik Washington being kind of your Debo-like player. Hasn't turned out that way. And yeah, there's obviously the clicking a trust chemistry. It's trust chemistry more so than pure trust, and it's absolutely a factor without question. Noel, partner, thank you very much for the donation, Noel. Think McDaniel will be here as long as Tua is. Can't imagine a new head coach would be excited to be strapped with Tua. Yeah, I do think it's a combo deal. Absolutely. And again, and wouldn't be surprised if it was a full combo with Champ Kelly as well, Tua, Mike McDaniel, clean slate at the start of 2026. You have 1 year. You have 1 year to prove it to me. No more excuses about bad roster Chris Greer has given you, because the truth is, I think Mike McDaniel has some qualities as a head coach. There are certain times when the Dolphins as an outfit does not look like a very well-coached team. So it cannot be absolved of blame. It's not all on Chris Greer that the Dolphins are 2-7. That's just bogus. Matt, thank you very much, Matt. Much appreciated the donation here. I can't shake the feeling getting rid of Greer first sets up keeping McDaniel next year. Don't agree with it, but I could see that no one could win with that bad of a roster type logic from Ross. Ding, 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 ding. No, absolutely. I think absolutely the wheels are in motion for Mike McDaniel to be back. Pug, thank you very much for the donation. Do you think they could eat the $99 million and just stick with Wilson and Ewers next year? Concede in 26 trade players for the 2027 draft? No on any counts. And again, if they were going to move on from Tua and that decision already had been made, there would be, in my eyes, zero reason to keep Mike McDaniel. Really wouldn't be. So could they do it? Yeah. I mean, I'm not telling you it's impossible, but I find the likelihood of that to be very, very small. Fish Pilot, thank you very much for the donation. Not sure why Ross can't keep his fingers out of these hires. He always sticks with a new guy with some leftover dregs. No, he always sticks a new guy with some leftover dregs. Guess 17 years of losing isn't enough for Ross. Yeah, that's when people complain about Stephen Ross, and I kind of push back. You got an owner who doesn't necessarily meddle in the day-to-day personnel decisions, will always be willing to provide the financial support. The shortcoming is, again, the hiring processes, generally speaking, are very, 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 what's the word I'm looking for? Very messy, not handled particularly well. It's very rare that it's one group. It's piecemeal. Dyslexia going on here. A little piecemeal, a little bit too often, and that doesn't help. And again, would it have been the better play here even if he'd wanted to wait till the end of the season to just flush it all out at the same time. Pardon me. We shall see, but your complaint is actually very well founded. Shadow Fatez, I believe it's going to be pronounced. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Thank you very much for the donation. Think a team with a good secondary and needs a rusher would value JP. If DBs were able to defend a second longer than the Finns, JT maybe finishes more often. He's not a good finisher. I don't think that's the main issue. Yeah, I absolutely do think that there's going to be a market for Jalen Phillips because, again, the pressure has been fairly consistent. And if you have a better secondary than the Dolphins have, and again, I don't think it's been the disaster show that a lot of people thought it was going to be, but it's not necessarily high end. If you have like a very good secondary and you can get somebody who provides consistent pressure like Phillips has done, yes, there will be value there. Matto, thank you very much, sir. Watching the Bills tonight or the limited Waller time makes it infuriating that the tight end was not handled better. Allen makes everyone looks better, but a good tight end would help to or any QB so much, in my opinion. Yeah. And here's the thing, too, is you look at the Bills' wide receiver core, it's really nondescript. I mean, Shakir's a nice player, but he's not a number one. Keon Coleman is a good complementary player, but he was drafted as a first-round pick. He hasn't been that. And you look at what else do they have? Curtis Samuel, Josh Palmer, who they got from the Chargers, who was injured today. Their wide receiver core was very, very nondescript. In fact, that's why there are a lot of the pundits who are like, looking for the Bills, maybe make a move for a wide receiver. What they do have is they have a great tight end room with Dalton Kincaid, who's a former first-round pick, Dawson Knox, who's a former second-round pick, and then Jackson Hawes, the rookie from Georgia Tech, who was like a fifth-round pick. And the Dolphins, meanwhile, are going, and no disrespect, but Julian Hill was an undrafted free agent. Tanner Conner was an undrafted free agent. Greg Dulcich, who they got after he was waived by the Giants, and then Darren Waller, who's your main guy, except he's a guy with an injury history. And this is why, and if you look at the draft this year, hell, look, even in 2023, Dolphins took Cam Smith in the second round. Tyler Kraft was an early third-round pick. Tell me that wouldn't have been a better pick. This year, they could have had Tyler Warren at 13. Instead, they took Kenneth Grant. It's too early to decide that was a bad pick, but right now it doesn't look good. Or in the fifth round, the Dolphins had 3 picks. They took Jason Marshall Jr., they took Jordan Phillips, they took Dante Trader Jr. Meanwhile, the Chargers, who were picking behind them, took Oronde Gasson too. And he's completely balling out. So, yes, the Dolphins have absolutely dropped the ball on the tight end position. And this isn't to say, by the way, the Dolphins completely flopped it. Sip of water here. By not giving Jonnu Smith the contract he wanted, because his big numbers were the product of how the offense evolved last year to where everything was a check down and going short, which is why Jonnu Smith racked up big numbers where he's a fine tight end, but he's not necessarily a difference maker in my book. Mandalorian, all the way from Europe, 5 pounds. Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated. 5 Earth Welsh pounds. Any chance we could get a 2 for Phillips in a bidding war? Like I said before, a straight 2 for Phillips to me would be like, sign me up, and the GM on the other end of the line wouldn't have time to finish the sentence. We're going to give you a 2 for Jalen Phillips. Yes. My guess is the only way the Dolphins get a 2 for Jalen Phillips, as I mentioned earlier, is they throw in something else. So it would be a 2 for Jalen Phillips and a 4, something along those lines. I'd be shocked if you got a 2 straight up for Jalen Phillips. So we shall see. Mike Skalski, thank you very much, sir. Very much appreciated. Hey, Poop, Doug keeps saying that we can convert some of Tua's salary to a signing bonus to lessen the hit. Is that true? If you convert some of the salary to signing bonus, you lessen the hit. You also prolong it, because your signing bonus is going to go in that cap. Here's the thing: if you trade Tua, whatever team acquires him takes on the base salary. The signing bonus is always a responsibility of the team that gives it, and if you convert some of his base salary, which the Dolphins could have done this year, but it would have extended their commitment because of cap numbers for longer years, which is why they didn't do it. This cap number is $39 million. They easily could have brought it down by converting salary into signing bonus, and then you prorate it, and then you extend it for more years. But it's a longer commitment, and I don't think the Dolphins want to do that or wanted to do that either. Okay, let's check this out here. Am I going to go from the back? Douglas Anderson, Phillips will get you more than a third. I'd take a third. And I wrote about this again on MiamiDolphinsInside.com. I can't ask you enough, guys, to go check out their website. For those who are saying no, hang on to Phillips. If he leaves as a free agent, you get a third as a compensatory pick. It's not that simple. There's no guarantee. Because injuries come into play. If he signs, it's all based on annual average salary, playing time, postseason accolades. If he signs for good money, that would get you a third normally, but then he gets injured early in the year, that third becomes something else. Christian Wilkins, for example, was supposed to be a third, wound up being a fourth round pick. Jawan James, supposed to be a third, wound up 6 or a 7, I think, as I recall. So there is no guarantee with the compensatory pick thing. So let's not think in terms of, Dolphins should hang on to Jalen Phillips. If you get the chance to get a third right now, and it's not in your mind to re-sign him for the long term, and that's another debate. Should the Dolphins want to re-sign Jalen Phillips for the long term? How much is Jalen Phillips going to want? How much is Jalen Phillips worth? Don't know. One other point here too. Whoops. Let me go back to the comment. One other point here. Fishbowl. A third is really a fourth anyway with the comp picks. Yeah, because you're waiting a year. Because if you make here's the thing: if you make the trade for Jalen Phillips Tuesday, and you get a third, there's your third. If you get a third round pick as a compensatory pick, if he leaves in free agency next March, you don't get that fourth round pick or that third round pick until 2027, and draft pick loses a round for every year. So yes, your third round pick is better now than your third round pick would be in 2027. So. Greg, when are we going to see Ewers, Theo Weiss Jr., Eskridge, Wright, maybe some Taj Washington? That's the one I forgot, Taj Washington. I want to see all those guys paired together more if I'm evaluating guys forward on offense. Sure, absolutely. Yep, I like all those guys. I really, really like Theo Weiss Jr. I'm very concerned about his ability to be able to get open in the NFL. We'll see yours when Wilson and Tua are injured. Not so sure about that. Actually, you had the nice phonetic pronunciation right here. You call them yours. There you go, yours. We so sure about that? We sure the Dolphins decide to make him a quarterback again for evaluation purposes? I don't know that it would be for Zach Wilson. Don't know. Tua, show me the money. Fans, we are fricked. Smash that thumbs up. Thank you, Invincible. Please. What else we got here? Why would they keep McDaniel in 2026? We aren't going anywhere next season, so why keep him? It really just prolongs everything because Stephen Ross really, really, really likes Mike McDaniel, thinks he's a very good coach, and they can win big with him. That's why. Move on from Chubb and Phillips. Don't trust their injury history. Haven't been hurt this year. Fish Pilot, this team has zero chance to be competitive next season. They need to take every lump they can then. I don't know if I'd say zero chance to be competitive. You never know. You just never know. The only real reason to convert it to a signing bonus is to help the trade option. Bingo. Let's see. Mason Taylor also. Yep. Although to me is different than Tyler Warren or Ronde Gatson too, because Tyler Warren looks generational. Mason Taylor is a second-round pick, which is kind of early in the draft. And while he looks good, I don't know that he looks that I'm like blown away by him. So, and then Oranagason was drafted in the 5th round. So there's the value there to me is just striking with Warren just because of how good he's been, and with Gasson because of where he was drafted. Douglas says if Buffalo picks up Olave, it's definitely over for us. All the reporting is that New England's more inclined to trade Shaheen than Chris Olave, but Douglas, if we're going to be fair, because I know Dolphin fans would say this, Chris Olave's got a nasty injury history. He's got some pretty nasty concussion history. You're taking a chance there, you know. Fishpile, if this team keeps Phillip, they will have to pay him like a top 5 DN. If they do that and he doesn't improve, then they are screwed with another back contract. You don't pay him like he's not a top 5 DN. Sorry. And I don't want to hear the market is the market. We've done this before and we're not doing it again. Or I don't want to do it again. Michael, hit the like button, please. Thank you, Michael. Michael, I see your comments all the time. I really appreciate your loyalty, my friend. Freedom Fun Adventure. What exactly is the nature of Greer's son's relationship with Cam Smith? I know rookies, but his son either lied to him about Smith's personality, dedication, or I don't know. Horrible. Greer made Miami soft in his time. Okay. Well, Greer's son played with Cam Smith at South Carolina. I don't know what he would have said to him. And I want to take issue with your Greer made Miami soft in his time. You don't think Mike McDaniel had any say whatsoever in any of the personnel decisions? And remember, Chris Greer has always been a facilitator. That's what he said. In fact, that's what he admitted was one of his biggest shortcomings. He always basically tends to defer. And for example, you don't think the Devon Achane pick had Mike's signature all over it? Yeah. Chris Greer, Stephen Ross threw out the idea of taking Lamar Jackson in the 2018 draft. Chris Greer was like, no, we're going to take Minkah Fitzpatrick. Was that like a soft move? I don't believe so. So, no. Edwin, I saw a headline about Stephen Ross being offered $10 billion to sell. Was it true? I believe it was. And Stephen Ross said, no, I'm good. No, you guys are talking to each other. Yep. Moto Dad, thank you very much. Like, comment, subscribe. Absolutely. All of that good stuff. Matt, thank you very much, sir. Keep thinking about the 2007, 2008 jump to stay positive. The cap situation ruled that out. We need our Parcells, Pirano, Pennington rescue, which is why, again, this notion the Dolphins can compete in 2026, it's too early. We don't know. And that was a very unique situation. Who's to say another one doesn't come up like that? No, the Dolphins cap situation. I'm going to look over here. I have one of my 70,000 tabs open. Drive my wife nuts with all my tabs open. If you look at next year's big cap numbers, Tua's got the big cap number, but that's Tyreek Hill right now is at 51.9. He's gone. And if they make him they can chop off like 36 million off of that. Bradley Chubb right now is at 31. He's going to get chopped off. That's another nice chunk of savings. And then the next highest number is Jalen Waddle, 11.7. So no, I don't think the cap situation is going to prevent them from being able to do a quick turnaround. They have to get the right pieces. But it's been done before. It has been done before. What do we got here? Oh, you guys didn't know this? Basketball Jones, Greer's son played with Cam Smith at South Carolina. Of course, you didn't know that, guys? Yep. Cassandra, the best thing the Dolphins should do is just trade Phillips for a third, Waddle for a first on a third, Chubb for a fifth, and Minkah for a fourth, and Wright for whatever you can get. You're not getting a third, first, and a third for Jalen Waddle. Sorry, not happening. Look at previous trades for wide receivers who, with all the respect, were better than Jalen Waddle. So not happening. Chubb for a 5, Minkah for a 4th. Why are we trading Jalen Wright? Don't tell me because he sucks, because you don't know if he sucks. He hasn't played this year, so we don't know. I would trade Tua, Waddle, Phillips, the Raiders for first and day 2 or 3 pick. They're not taking on. Nobody's trading for Tua. I hate to break it to you. Nobody's trading for Tua. Fish Pilot, thank you very much for the donation, the contribution. Poop, anyone would want to take GM spot? Ray Agnew, Detroit Lions assistant GM, was with Brad Holmes with the Rams, has been with Brad Holmes with the Lions. That team has just nailed their draft picks. He's somebody who kind of jumps out to me. Oh, that's funny. So if you ask me for one person right now, the guy, don't know that's going to happen because, again, my gut feeling, I saw somewhere one of the reports was like, there's no way that Champ Kelly is going to be the GM in 2026, to which I say, we sure about that? This is funny. Basketball Jones, you're a funny dude. Does Greer's cousin play with Channing Tindall at Georgia? LOL. Yeah, it's funny. Matt, only thing about McDaniel I really question is his leadership. That's a question. What about the operational issues, which keep occurring? Game adjustments. Dolphins have been outscored by an average of 4 points in the third quarter of the season. An average every game. That's pretty high in the third quarter. Doesn't necessarily speak well of coaching adjustments. Also, the decision to elect to receive when you win the coin toss. JC, no GM will come here strapped with immature Mike McDaniel who refused to ever change his scheme. What? The immature is unnecessary in that comment. Completely unnecessary. Kind of worried. Top GM candidates won't want to come here if they're told they need to keep Tua next year, and that Ross wants to keep McDaniel paired with him for at least that last year. Yep, which is why it wouldn't surprise me if it was Champ Kelly. Let me go back to the top here. Whoa, got a lot of comments, and we'll be able to get through all of them. Let's see what else we got here. Will Champ Kelly have an opportunity to trade Waddle? Yes, if the price is right. But again, why? Do you guys really want Waddle traded? Makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. No, you're not getting a 1 for Jalen Waddle. Sorry. Look back to what was it? Jay Brown got a 1. That was at the draft, which is different than in season. Devontae Adams got like 2s. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank to other big name wide receivers who did not fetch a 1. So, no, you're funny. No, I'd stay sober if I'd known there's going to be a podcast. You're funny. You're funny, dude. Jim, thank you. Good to see you. Thanks for hopping on. Alan, will the Dolphins interview Louis Riddick for the GM job? I don't know. I don't know what their list is going to look like. It's not going to happen until the end of the season. I know somebody in the media who would love that. Again, what I would love is, and I wish there would probably be some good money to be made if somebody were ever to write down every prediction made by analysts in terms of college players and their pro prospects, and then go back 3 years after the fact and then grade them to see. Because everybody's going to have hits and misses, but like who hits the most? So I don't know. Let's see. No to Riddick. What? Oh, Mark said, Mike, you don't want Louis Riddick. Okay. Fire everybody. Not happening. See what else we got here. The fact he hasn't gotten better as a coach says it all. Has he gotten worse, though? Is the talent level not as good? Because I said it before. Actually, there was somebody who in a comment was suggesting that the talent level this year heading into the season was as good as anything Dolphins had under McDaniel, and I was like, what are you drinking? Because the 2023 team was a really, really good roster. Didn't get it done, though. Rose said that I like McDaniel as a head coach. There's something there too. Is definitely not the answer. Not the way he's playing right now, and he looks a little beaten down physically. He had a good game against Atlanta. But for a good chunk of the season, it happened against Baltimore again. He looks a little skittish in the pocket. And I don't know if it's body wearing down, not trusting the offensive line combination of everything, thinking too much about not taking a big hit. I don't know, but he looks skittish in the pocket. Pardon me, Greg says only way to know how McDaniel is at its current time is to see what he could do with yours at the helm. Okay, that's fair. And then as we proceed to wrap it up, let's see what we got here. Richard, let's see what we got. Alan, this is the first time I've given you a message out of everybody. I respect you more than anyone else. I watched the Buffalo Kansas City game with our quarterback. How could we beat Josh Allen? First of all, Richard, thank you very, very much. That means a lot. I really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Yeah, Josh Allen's just really, really good. I mean, and this is, I find it funny that I got accused like, I'm a Josh Allen lover. No, I respect the dude. He's just really, really good. And it's not just him, but Patrick Mahomes is a dude. I mean, this is why, even at his best, if you're a follower of the podcast for long enough, and I had a contention with my previous co-host that the Dolphins play in a conference with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. And it's like, even at his best, Tua, when he was very good, highly efficient, leading the league in passer rating or in passing yards, he's not at that level. And the Dolphins should not, to me, settle. You should always be looking to get somebody to reach that level. And I understand, and it was always the reply I always got was, oh, well, you okay, fine, get rid of him. Who else are you going to get? That's not the point. The point was you don't stop looking for somebody like that. And you also don't commit for 3 years when you kind of know the guy is not to that level, on top of the fact that he's got a nasty injury history, which was the issue with the tour extension. So now on top of those 4 guys, now we got Drake May. I'm sorry, but Drake May's a baller. And he's going to be in the Dolphins' way for a little bit. And then New England got him 3rd overall in the draft. And Buffalo got Josh Allen 7th by jumping from 12 to 7 because they identified him as a dude. And I can tell you, Adam Gase really liked Josh Allen in that 2018 draft. But the Dolphins were picking 11th. Buffalo jumped from 12 to 7. Picked Josh Allen. Dolphins wound up taking Minkah Fitzpatrick at 11. Minkah Fitzpatrick's been a great NFL player in his career. Not a difference maker like Josh Allen is, because he's not a quarterback. Who else in the AFC? I think Justin Herbert's a dude too. And the Dolphins could have had him. They took Tua instead. So this is where we are. But Richard, again, more than anything else, very, very, very much appreciate the very nice compliment. Howie Pillardi, of course, who are the sources according to the sports writers? Referencing what? The sources, if I'm talking about Rappaport, Albert Breer, or who was it, Tom Pelissero, Schefter, when they're talking about the future of Mike McDaniel, take a wild guess with the sources. I mean, it's not kind of seems fairly obvious. It comes from somebody inside the Dolphin organization who knows what Stephen Ross is thinking, or has been told what Stephen Ross is thinking. Thoughts on Ross forcing McDaniel onto the next GM? Not a fan of it. Watch us just make Champ Kelly the GM, as he will be the only guy who will be okay with McDaniel as the head coach. Tua and Tannehill, same. They need one season to trust, otherwise only target their faves. I mean, there's something normal about having a comfort level with somebody you've worked with for a bit, and then targeting your favorite players. Isn't it? Richards, Josh Allen is so much better than anything we can come up with. We are in an impossible situation with Tua. Kind of, sort of. Yep. Kind of, sort of. Let's see. Yep. Boy, watching the Chiefs-Bill game reminds me what it looks like. Yep. And by the way, from this end, I know this is, it's the All Dolphins podcast, and I know a lot of Dolphin fans are going to want to hear this because it's, hate the Bills, hate the Bills, hate the Bills, hate the Bills, and I get it. For me, as somebody I cover the Dolphins, devoted to covering the Dolphins. Outside of that, I don't have I don't. If the Dolphins are not going to win or go anywhere, then I don't have any reason to dislike Buffalo just because they play in the same division as the Dolphins. And for me, it's like we can get KC out of the equation in the AFC for 1 year. That would be nice because I like a little variety in my life and kind of tired of seeing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game every year since 2017. Enough already. So, I'm going to put it up. I usually try not to acknowledge other podcasters, especially guys who, from what I'm told, apparently make it a habit of taking shots at me. But it's just funny. Can we trade Big O? Asking for a friend. That's funny. Big O, Tom, for the record, no, Big O is not Omar Kelly. Big O is a YouTube radio talk show host by the name of Orlando Alzagari. Jim, good luck finding a head coach that wants to be anchored with Tua. Dolphins already have a head coach who's anchored with Tua. Sorry. Playing yours makes 0 sense. And why is that? Once the Dolphins are mathematically out of playoff contention, don't you want to see what he can do in a real game setting as opposed to the end of a blowout at Cleveland? To me, it makes a lot more sense than playing Zach Wilson. You kind of know what he is, and then he's signed to a 1-year contract. Is Zach Wilson really coming back in 2026? Okay. Saban wrecked the Dolphins in his time here. Did he, though? Did we ever wonder what would have happened if Drew Brees hadn't gotten red flagged by the Dolphins medical staff after the 2005 season? The Dolphins had signed him instead of trading for Dante Culpepper. Okay. Champ Kelly, trade Tua now and become part of Dolphin history. If you pull that off, you deserve the GM spot. Nobody's trading for Tua. Okay. You know what, gang? I think that's going to wrap it up. I've actually gone over an hour. I didn't think I was going to go that long, but that's the way it went. Enjoyed it as always. Thank you so much for all who joined in this evening on this late called impromptu All Dolphins podcast. Again, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm going to be back tomorrow, beginning of a new week. Mike McDaniel will address the media for the first time since the reports that he'll stay at least through the end of the 25 season came out. It'll be interesting to see what he has to say. Please check out the written content. As I always mention, Miami Dolphins on SI.com. On that note, thanks everyone again. Have a good night.